Hello, and welcome to the first and final episode of Gummy Bear Science. I'm your host, Avery Ash. Today, my gummy bear assistants and I will demonstrate osmosis and molarity. For this experiment, I had 3 assistants, triplets actually. My first assistant is afraid of water, so he stayed nice and dry inside the house all day. He's my control bear. My second assistant headed down to Lake Michigan for one last beach day before the Chicago winter kicks in. He is my freshwater bear. My third assistant is a jet setter, so he flew down to Florida for a proper beach day at the Atlantic Ocean, and he is my saltwater bear. My 2 beachgoers came back looking a bit different than they did before. My freshwater bear is now much bigger than my control bear. And my saltwater bear is also bigger than the control bear. What happened? Osmosis happened. Whenever there is an unequal number of molecules on either side of a semi-permeable membrane, the difference in concentration will cause water to move across the membrane. That's osmosis. When my freshwater bear dipped into Lake Michigan, his body had a lower concentration of water than the surrounding water around him. And he also had a higher concentration of sugar than his surroundings, so the water wanted to move into that. The surrounding water, known as a hypotonic solution, entered into his body, which in and of itself is a semi-permeable membrane, to create equilibrium in the form of an isotonic solution. With enough time, the water would cease its passage into the bear because the concentration of water inside the bear would be equal to the concentration outside of it. Now, I expected my saltwater bear to shrink in size after his dip into the Atlantic Ocean. He should have found that his body had a higher concentration of water than the hypertonic solution around him. And to make up the difference, the water inside his body should have transferred out in an attempt to equalize the molarity of his body and the ocean. That did not happen in my experiment tonight. I believe my mistake was that the salt was not fully dissolved into the water. I could see solid particles of salt, and I erroneously believed that meant that the water was fully saturated and no more salt could dissolve. In reality now, I think that I just did not stir it long enough for the salt to be able to fully dissolve. And so my salt water is more like fresh water, and so it is going to behave like fresh water. You can see a visible difference in size between my freshwater bear and my saltwater bear. The freshwater bear is definitely bigger. So that does demonstrate that the relative concentrations of the freshwater versus the saltwater, that the saltwater had a higher concentration of solute, and so it was more in line with the bear, and less water needed to enter into it to achieve equilibrium, whereas there was a bigger difference between the gummy bear and the surrounding fresh water, and so more water needed to enter in to create equilibrium. And there we have it. Thank you for watching Gummy Bear Science. I'm your host, Avery Ash. Don't like or subscribe because episode 2 is dropping never.